Hi, everyone. Super happy to be here. Glad you guys are here. My name is Ms. Icar, and I am part of an anonymous collective of artists. We put together some videos to share with you about our process and the way that we work on things. So, our name, Ms. Icar, is actually racism backwards. And a lot of our work is very process driven, so we tend to move through work that way. Bear with us here. We are a little bit Luddites on the Zoom, but so our collective is comprised of majority of black. It's mostly black women, but it's all people of color. And we have chosen to work anonymously so that we can focus predominantly on the work. So many times, being a part of marginalized groups, we are often kind of shuffled into tokenism, and it's something that we wanted to remove from our process of sharing work. And so, yeah, that's the reason why we are here anonymously, but totally accountable. Our process is extremely process driven. So, in terms of working on things, we tend to take a theme and then pick it apart. So, the current themes that we're working on is themes of exploration, uh, joy, play, broad representation, both in a cathartic method and as a way of healing. So we get together a lot of the times and sit there and really break down like why we're doing these things. Our mediums are anywhere from textiles, mixed media yarn, collage, and basically we see ourselves predominantly as arrangers. We put things together. So our group has includes a photographer, a street artist, a graphic designer, a prop stylist. We all work commercially in a variety of fields. And that's how we kind of got together and decided to take on value. So our project at Photoville, which is called Value in terms of iconography, was conceived from thinking about what we find valuable, what in our own professional mediums did we find our inspiration from. So working commercially, it's so easy to kind of get caught up in just assignments, like just moving through what someone kind of expects of you. And so we decided that we were going to take a slightly different approach to that process. We thought about when we were younger what things we were inspired by. And a lot of us were complete magazine junkies because that's where you got your information from. But the challenge that was there with a lot of the magazines, particularly in fashion, was that the lack of inclusion. It was just, we never saw ourselves. I mean, in ads, it just was not speaking to us at all as young women of color. And I mean, this is mostly our perspective is coming from like the late 80s, 90s into the 2000s. And so as we flip through all of these, we're basically like, where are we? There was nothing there for us. And so what we did gravitate to heavily was predominantly the what was considered the urban magazines. And that was that just opened up all kind of doors for us. Like most of us met through either working on shoots together, like being prop stylists, photographers, or or out and about in the photo world. And we talked about kind of having this joy, this value of being able to move through these publications and see yourself, see like really broad depictions of women of color, And just this style was so different than anything else that was being shown. Big up to like the folks at Trace, Suede magazine that didn't last too long. We loved going through these, and they really shaped the way that we moved through our own practice, working professionally and outside of this. So with that, we decided that we were going to gravitate to where we saw ourselves. Like, we're gonna find this joy. We're gonna pull it back together. And so that had us thinking about what is value? Like, what does it mean to actually be represented in media, and what does that do for your what does that do for you as far as possibilities and imagining things. Value has many different forms. So a lot of the times, I think when folks think of value, particularly in America, we think a lot of the times of of money. Like, that's kind of the first and foremost thing that comes to mind is like currency a lot of the times. But currency has a lot of different weights. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to just be um, coins, finances, things like that. Currency has like the weight of also um, seeing yourself, jewels, texture, anything that just feels really good and has a value to you and the way that you move through the world. And so we decided with this project that we wanted to really explore what that's meant to us. When we are thinking about value in America, we're thinking about how a lot of things that represent value are actually, they can be quite toxic to people of color, Black people in particularly. I mean, when you think about even our money, we have people on our money that owned people that looked like us. That's super duper toxic. So, where we decided that we wanted to start was we wanted to remix that whole story. We wanted to reimagine what it looks like to be in a spot that is central to your existence, your representation, everything that is something that is supportive to like your development in the world. There's so much of violence and like both physical and also just verbal and yucky media and all kinds of stuff when it comes to Black women. What does it look like to actually like remix this narrative and give it a whole different structure? So what we started to do was we realized that we needed to start compiling all of our source imagery. At the core of everything, we are arrangers, and we spend a lot of time cutting, reshooting, shooting, rearranging, putting things together. And we knew that we were going to need some serious source imagery to kind of move through and create this series of value and reshaping things as we move through. So what we did was we decided that we were going to hit up a friend of the collectives, Erin Patrice O'Brien, because she has a fantastic archive of so many things that we are, and so many images that we are inspired by. We spent a couple days going through her archives, scanning negatives, hearing her stories, and realized there was a lot of intersectionality about her experience in the commercial photo world, as there was with ours, just being one of the few women who was shooting this type of work. And we talked pretty openly about like why is your work not, why is it not included in a lot of the canons of archives of hip hop? Why are we not seeing so many of these things? And a lot of the times when you're not included in archives, you're erased. And there's a lot of intersectionality between her experience and our collective experience in the photo industry. And so that kind of even further fueled us wanting to elevate this narrative. And being that we are arrangers, a lot of it has to do with just creating a refocus. We wanted to do something that was big, something that that kind of just showed possibility and magic and play, like that there's some fun within this and having a good time. So we started with cutting because that's generally, I mean, after we scanned everything, we generally print out everything, we start to cut things, we put them together, we arrange them, and we thought about what things people will at a glance identify with as being valuable. That was a part of this whole project. And we knew that that this was going to be kind of a magical collage series. It had to be something that felt good. It had to be something that that was fun to work on and was just a blast putting it all together. So these are all like kind of examples of our process and how we move through. We've also got our own massive archives of images to work from as well. So we shoot sometimes with the intention of collaging, and sometimes we shoot kind of not knowing exactly where things are going to go. So in the broader scope of things, we thought a lot about how people view diversity. And a lot of the times we feel like when institutions view inclusivity, it's taken from this point of view that is very white centric. Like it's from one center space or perspective. And so diversity for institutions hmm, tends to look like this, where it's like, hey, we did a good job. We've got our token person in there, or we're filling our quotas. With this project, we knew that, especially hearing Aaron's stories and our own stories, that diversity and storytelling, like this inclusion, needs to look a lot different. And being that we're so process driven, we decided to kind of put together an example of what in relation to what we just previously showed, we feel like this type of diversity is problematic and we don't want to move through that anymore. But we definitely see that there's room for all kinds of stories, remixing things, even within journalism, even within creative arts, things that aren't necessarily seen as being like ordained truths. There's so many ways to tell a story. And so this project, we decided to exercise a lot of those mediums into how to tell this story. So first thing first, all great things require organization. I mean, especially when you're working with so many materials across the board. So what we do is we tend to organize our files. We put everything together in sections so that we're kind of ready to go, ready to start pulling together whatever narrative or place of exploration that we're going. And and so it requires us to shoot our images, print our images, sometimes cut them up. We section them into nature, animal, value. The project that we're currently working on, we've got an illustrator in our collective. So sometimes things get drawn and they kind of get put into what we call stacks. And these are our stacks where we get all of our source pieces together, um, see what we're going to do with them, and basically take it from there, start our arrangement process. And a lot of our process just has to do with it's refocusing, like you being able to use all of these textures and mediums to kind of focus the eye and the viewer in a particular place is like just another tool in the toolkit of putting things together. So we're going to talk about our piece Miss Badu that we did along with Erin Patrice O'Brien, and kind of go over the process of that. So Miss Badu, we ended up, I think we scanned this one. We may have shot it though. One of our members illustrated on and on and on because that was the first thing that we thought of with this like glorious picture of Erica Badu. And she illustrated all over, and then we just start to cutting. We were thinking about seeing somebody who's a talented musician, of course, but just representing like this hair, seeing people with beads, like things that like are part of our youth and fun and represent so much of Black fashion through like a nostalgia and also through current day fashion trends. And so we pulled together rhinestone chain, all kinds of things, and we just got to cutting. We got to cutting and putting pieces together, and what we call remixing. I mean, music is a big part of our inspiration as well. So I guess that kind of gets put into the way that we collage and move through imagery as well. And so we just take our time. We like shadows. We tend to pull those out because we like using them as another tool to illustrate space and three-dimensional process as we move through. So we knew with this project that since we're talking about value, it definitely needed to be big. Like you can't really like, I mean, here, especially like in the States, if something is big, that usually determines whether it has value or not. And we get a kick out of that, like the even the thought of that something needs to be big to be valuable, because we don't necessarily see that as a truth, but for this project, it's the truth. So we decided to go with it. So we also went through our own archives. We went through really old publications and we collaged work and we started doing all of these like larger test prints when we were done to get an idea of scale and kind of held on to the project for a little bit because we just weren't sure. COVID hit. We're like, where's it going to go? And I think that's where a Photoville came into play because we knew that that was going to be a really great way to display this work and just have a joyous celebration of the accomplishments of all of these entertainers and what they've done and what they've moved on to do and where where they've kind of uh, ended up and what they're currently doing. So we're going to share with you our location of our project. It's so we ended up, thanks to the Photoville team, having a cube on display and with these really large and in charge pictures of all of these glorious women, um, basically showing all that value and play. That's pretty much our project. Like that's pretty much the way that that we rolled through in doing this and our process and kind of the way that we move through.